Guess we are live, right? Welcome, everyone.
Good morning.
Did we
Hey,
hit
hey,
the
hey.
intro right? I guess you did a good job, Versan.
Yeah, there's like
Yeah,
a 2 second delay between hitting the intro and then going live. And I've still tried to figure this out and I can't. It's funny. I can figure
that's
out
fine.
how to
I
move
was a bit
money around
confused
the
if I
world
was
cross
the one that
border.
should hit the intro, and I was
Mm,
like, okay, he did it, so I guess 2 seconds, it's fine. So,
Yeah.
how you guys doing today? Is all good, David?
Awesome. Awesome. It is I think a big week for this whole ecosystem. And we got some stuff happening with the SEC on the 20th. I know they have these behind closed door meetings, but I think this one, when you look at the agenda, could be a really pivotal one for XRP, especially with the rhetoric that's coming out with, I think, Ueda, who is the acting chair, stuff like that. So who knows what's going to happen there. But otherwise, yeah, I'm doing fabulous.
yeah, can't
That's awesome.
complain.
I have a feeling that things are heating up, you know, and I think they are heating up for XRP and they're heating up for gold. And I have
Mm-hmm.
seen some of your recent titles, Versan. I think you came with some bold titles, which I loved, by the way.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at the gold chart when Trump got in the White House, and some people were saying that Trump would slow down the gold. And I think right now we see that gold keeps moving up despite the new administration. So I think gold is way bigger than Trump. I think gold is actually outside of what could the Trump's administration to interfere in the gold market. So I would like to hear your opinion on that. Maybe Versan can start, as he has been very vocal with the gold subject recently.
Yeah. Well, thank you. A lot going on. I think one of the biggest developments we need to focus on is the statement from Trump's new Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He said recently that we need a Bretton Woods realignment. And he did emphasize the critical role of gold. And I think that statement alone confirms a great deal of things. Number one, that gold remains central to the financial system, which would explain why central banks are still buying gold at record highs. And then we see the repatriation efforts are beginning to accelerate. So that's the first thing. The second thing is a new monetary framework is coming. We can confirm this. We already know this. But whether it's being reconstructed as a Bretton Woods or something similar to that, I think we've been expecting the shift. We already know what's going on. It's really the Bank for International Settlements. The IMF, the World Bank, and even the United Nations have all signaled pretty much the same current banking system that is no longer working. And the thing is, it's not just not working for the average individual anymore, but it's not even working for the 1%ers. And the dollar's value is still continuing to erode, even with the Trump administration. I think that's a whole different subject we'll talk about in a little bit, but confidence is still diminishing. So the third thing then would be that the dollar's role isn't disappearing, but it's evolving. And we've seen this already to a degree with RLUSD. It's a digital dollar that functions very similar to a central bank digital currency. People will have their thoughts on this, and we can talk about this more in detail. I've also written some articles on X about this, where I really try to break this down and help you understand it. But despite being called a stable coin, I think the trend is clear that gold is going to be the base reserve asset, and blockchain, this intersection, this is something Andy talks a lot about and all of us here, is going to serve as its digital representation. And I think that's where XRP also comes into the conversation. But there's no doubt that XRP and even gold will have some form of relationship, whether it's directly or indirectly through stable coins, whole different subject as well. The World Gold Council has really hinted at this for years. I've covered this extensively on my channel 2 years ago, and it's obvious that the transition has been planned all along, but I think the current system is just being dragged out to further consolidate wealth, which explains why the wealth gap is continuing to widen. Even with Trump back in office, inflation is only going to intensify into 2025 because of the reckless spending from the Biden administration, which puts even more pressure on the dollar, again, reinforcing gold's role in what's coming. So we're early, we're not wrong, and I think this community has been so far ahead of the curve. It's incredible. And we've been anticipating these shifts for many years now before they even make headlines. So it is a reminder also that the real wealth lies in like tangible assets. And this is something I try my best to teach and emphasize upon our clients. It's not just digital currencies. I think it's gold, silver, physical commodities, resources. I'm investing in seeds now for the long term because of scarcity of food. So, I just want to reinforce the importance of gold. And that's something that we see now becoming a mainstream narrative again.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. In fact, there's a big push right now for an audit of the U.S. reserves in gold. I mean, you got Rand Paul really putting on the pressure to get Elon Musk, and not just him, but there's members sitting in the Congress and the Senate that are saying, "Hey, we need an audit of where is the U.S. in terms of its gold holdings and reserves." And so, I think that's going to be a big play. Now, I personally, I think the gold is there, but nobody has actually seen the vaults inside Fort Knox there hasn't been an audit since the 1970s. We're talking almost 50 years. And I do think the gold is there, but the thing is, who owns all the gold in there? That's another question. And this is where you could see a revaluation of the price of gold, and it could happen almost overnight. And if that was to take place, $5,000, even $10,000 an ounce may not be that far off, in terms of like, what it could be valued against, the dollar, of course, fiat currencies and things like that, because we may very well not have what they say we have in total of, what's there. And in terms of what is owned by the United States. Now, I think the report is 5,000 to 8,000 tons, I believe is what the US says that they actually hold and own. And so, yeah, and there's a big push for having Doge go out there, Elon Musk, and for them to actually audit the gold reserves, which I think could really impact price big time. So in terms of dollar denominated assets, yeah, I mean, the dollar is under a lot of pressure, as we all know. I think that although there is no retail CBDC, and of course, Trump issued his executive order, I think that that thing could turn around real fast, where they're going to peg things against a lot of these digital assets or a gold backed style digital asset, primarily because confidence in the system is going to wane, and big time. It already is. And you even had, I think, Jerome Powell coming out there talking about, because he was questioning Congress about global and 24/7, cross-border remittances, and how that, network could be facilitated. Well, I believe it's March 10th that we go live with a lot of, the ISO 222, messaging standard nations that are going to be in there. And it's that protocol. Well, there's only, a couple digital assets in there that actually speak that language right now that could handle the volume of what's coming. And I do believe we could more than likely see some level of a monetary instrument, whether it's going to be a sovereign monetary instrument or not. I don't know. I don't know if I don't think it'll be classified as a CBDC, but I do think that there will be a monetary instrument where you are going to see gold-backed digital assets that folks will be able to go into. RLUSD could certainly form a big part of that. And we already know in Dubai, they are tokenizing gold. So to me, I think it is a big piece of the puzzle of what the new economy is going to actually transition into. And like I say, you find out with an audit that the US is not where it said it was in terms of direct ownership, you're going to see a revaluation in the price of gold. And I think big time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can I make a comment real quick, Edo?
Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead. I love to discuss this about Elon Musk.
Yeah. Before I get into this, a comment on gold reevaluation. Number one, the gold reevaluation has always been in the arsenal. And I think that will come at an opportune moment when the central banks can't really fix the issues and solve them because of dollar liquidity, which is why a lot of this transition is even happening to begin with. The second thing is we've spoken to some wealth managers, and one of them is Clive Thompson. You guys might be familiar who watched the show. We did this interview with him like a year ago, my brother and I together, who I wish he was here. And Clive Thompson said on record that him and his buddies got together. And remember, bear in mind, these are Swiss wealth managers. He handled at least 2 billion in his lifetime of managing wealth. So these guys got together and they did some mathematics and put all the global debt, all the unbacked exposure, and just about everything that plagues this system. And they came up with a reevaluation for the gold price, and it was somewhere in about $87,000 an ounce. Wow. So that was very interesting, but I think we have to be mindful of just where this is all going again. Why would central banks be buying the gold? Why would the Bank for International Settlements reclassify physical gold as a tier 1 asset class back in 2017 and make no headlines about it while distracting people with Bitcoin? And a lot of people think Bitcoin is a digital gold, and that gives the opportune moment for central banks to continue to accumulate physical gold while people are distracted with digital gold. So that's something we need to be mindful as well. Physical assets, I think, are the real currency. They've always been. And of course, there's no doubt we're being bridged into a digital system. And that digital infrastructure is going to interestingly intersect with the commodities market. So that's the intersection you're referring to. And a reevaluation seems just.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
I like Versan how you mentioned the Bretton Woods. And when we start to think what was born after the Bretton Woods, or in other words, which institutions were born. So it's the World Bank and the IMF, right?
IMF and the World Bank, that's right.
Which are two institutions that have mentioned multiple times distributed ledger technology and XRP precisely. Also XLM as well. We can't forget about XLM. And I think it was the World Bank that described both of them as stable coins. So that's also something very interesting, because it's not coming from obsolete institution. It's coming from something that was born to be the central bank of the central banks. That's the role of the World Bank. Despite the fact that we are not at a gold standard anymore, we still have the World Bank playing a pivotal role on the world's economy. And what I think is very interesting is that, love what you said, Versan, about Bitcoin being the distraction, because I was having this reflection and I saw a tweet a couple of hours earlier. How many times did, let's say, Brett Gardenhouse or Monica Long or any one of the top tier 1 Ripple executives try to convince anyone to actually buy XRP? Have you ever heard them telling anyone to get on XRP? And it's very interesting how Michael Saylor, for example, is actually praying for people to actually get on Bitcoin and telling them to get rid of your house, sell your house to buy Bitcoin, very near to the top, right? On the all-time high levels. And you can see the same propaganda playing out 5 years ago, when actually was an interesting moment to buy digital assets such as Bitcoin. So when there was the right time to buy Bitcoin, there was a massive campaign against Bitcoin from mainstream media, which would often label it as a scam. I remember myself when I first bought BTC, I sold my car. I was a teenager and I got so much criticism of my family members, which, by the way, are very conservative on this subject, and they used to listen to mainstream media. And what was mainstream media telling them? Well, that Bitcoin is a scam. That was the right moment to buy Bitcoin, right? Right now we are near the top. We are near the all-time highs, and there's this massive propaganda pro-Bitcoin. And in the same time, nobody's telling anyone to get on XRP. Actually, they are very careful on the words they choose when talking about the digital asset XRP. And I would argue that sometimes they're even creating some sort of scenarios where there's confusion if Ripple is going to embrace XRP. Meanwhile, every single product of Ripple enable XRP capabilities. Basically, they leverage in the digital XRP, and sometimes they're not even talking a lot about XRP. So I start to wonder, what's the interest to the masses, right? I think that comes down. I think we are living through the pivot and cloud strategy on this moment on time. And what I see that people, and I did a video about this yesterday, people are being forced to sell their digital assets because if we look 50 years ago, that would be the equivalent of people selling their gold for paper money, which dollars
Mhm.
printed out of thin air. And I think the equivalent of that on nowadays is people selling their digital assets. And unfortunately, I get so many messages of people, and that even makes me emotional because I understand the importance of XRP and the digital assets that we hold. And so many people, unfortunately, because of the economical circumstances, are being forced to sell their digital assets to pay for their bills. So we have people that prior to the bull run, they managed to accumulate, let's say, 5,000 XRPs. And remember, most people don't have a lot of savings in the current
Mhm.
world economy.
Mhm.
So the pattern that's playing out now is that the economical situation is not getting any better. And that doesn't go only for the US. I talk about Europe. I travel a lot. You guys follow me on social media. I have been to probably 20 countries just in the last year, in the last 12 months, let's say. And I see it's a general issue that people can't save money and they are forced to sell their digital assets to actually pay for their basic needs, pay
Yeah.
Mm.
for shelter, pay for the foods. It's not getting any cheaper, and I don't want to sound negative, but I don't think the layoffs are going to stop. I think
No.
AI is speeding up this process, and that's tied exactly to
Mhm.
what Elon Musk is doing by putting the US Treasury on the blockchain. I think they're preparing us for a technocracy. So they're creating a crisis, an
Mhm.
orchestrated crisis, where the solution is going to be creating a welfare state where people are dependent on the
Mhm.
government and it's going to come with a universal income. And of course, when you look this at the first hand, you say that's nice. It's going to put the US Treasury on the blockchain. That's going to bring transparency to transactions, and we're going to be able to track public spending. But ultimately, the question is that going to be politicians using the private ledger, or it's going to be the people who are actually going to use the public ledger and in the way that they
Mhm.
are getting us ready for the digital economy, but it's going to be a selective digital economy. In other words, I see that 99 of the world's population is going to use the public ledger, and I
Yeah.
really see the politicians using the public ledger, and I don't
Yeah.
think that what
The
Elon Musk is proposing that I
Mhm.
don't think that's going to drive transparency. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Well, I think I agree with you in this capacity, Edo, that the current system as we have it has benefit, of course, the 1% and 2%ers. And when we talk about inflation and monetary policy, when Trump talks about, okay, we want to lower the interest rates, a lot of people say, oh, that's great because if they lower the interest rates, then my house value is going to go up. Well, what they don't realize, they lower the interest rates and they start, pooling more trillions of dollars into the system, which is exactly what they really want to do. Them this dog and pony show saying they don't want to do that. That's not true. Central banks want to inflate it like crazy. Of course, how does that benefit? Who does that benefit the most? Well, the money flows into, because you have all these treasury bills that are created by the Treasury. The Federal Reserve goes out and purchases those. That money goes into the banking system. Obviously, those that have assets, those that have, that ability to fractionally lend all that, and it goes downstream, well, they're the big benefactors of that. What happens to the rest of the population? Well, the purchasing power of the dollars in their pocket gets totally decimated, totally diminished. They become more and more encumbered, more and more in debt, right? And so now they're a slave to this system, basically, and it is a transfer of wealth. It is a known, like, you can really find this out, you can look this out. This is not make believe, this is not a conspiracy theory. You can see what's been going on. And what Versan said earlier, they're also, if the central bank has no confidence in real world assets, why on earth would they go out and accumulate physical gold to the tune in which they are? And when it comes to hard assets like that with gold, remember that almost all gold that's ever been mined we know about, right? We can know about. It's indestructible, so we know. And it's only held, it's the central bankers of the wide world are the ones that hold the majority of it. Majority of it is all hold. And it's a centralized power play, is exactly what it is. They're saying one thing with, here we're going to issue this fiat currency, We're gonna, you guys are gonna have more. Well, we're gonna bring interest rates down, and on and on. It's probably the biggest trap that there's ever. The best thing that would happen would be for interest rates to rise, and in fact, to get back to a wealth-based system. For the average folks, that would be the best thing that could ever happen, but that's not going to happen. We're being transitioned into a even deeper level of a debt-based system where every monetary instrument can be tracked right down to the very last division of what that is. And I do believe that, when we see something like this totally play out in the long term, the majority of people that are right now, their assets are being diminished. They're going into more debt. You're right. They're having to sell what they have just to maintain a basic lifestyle. And you can see that around the wide world, that majority of those people are not going to be able to get out from underneath what's coming. They just are not. And, they're being dissuaded from literally getting into this digital asset space. I mean, it's just been going on and on and on, all the FUD that they could possibly throw out there. Meanwhile, you got people like Larry Fink coming out and saying, hey, this digital asset space could literally be, a flight to safety like gold and silver have. And now imagine coupling both with a gold-backed monetary system, maybe managed through either the IMF or the BIS or something like that, and an ESDR, if you will, special drawing right or whatever, that would be the kind of last form of real money is what that will be. And I think that most people are just not aware of how these kind of policies will impact their the way we live, going forward. So for sure, I absolutely believe 100% that we are going to see a two-tiered system. There will be a public ledger that, the majority of the wide world is going to transact in, and there will be a private ledger. Now, what's really wild about that, you go back to some of these things that came out early on, like Kendra Hill, if you know who I'm talking about, and some of the things that she had put out there, where XRP would be literally looked like digital gold, and XLM will be a type of monetary system for the masses. And it could end up being like that. We could literally see the fulfillment of that. Wouldn't that be wild?
Yeah. I mean, a lot to unpack in what you both said. And first of all, Edo, I just realized you're wearing sunglasses. You look good, man. You look like Scott Storch. Do you know who that is? A musician.
No, because I have the lights, and these lights, they are really cooking my eyes. So I really took this decision to get the anti-blue lights.
You need to get the soft light, softer lights. Anyways,
yeah.
So, a lot to unpack in what you both said. God, I could go on for hours just touching on what you said, but I'm going to give you guys a fun fact. You did mention something about Bitcoin. That's a whole rabbit hole. I don't think we'll have time to discuss it this time, but we have covered it extensively over the years. So a fun fact, and I tweeted this once, but I think if XRP is the plumbing to the new financial system, then if Bitcoin were ever to reach its full potential, and these are the figures, 250,000, a million, I think it's going to rely for it to reach that kind of price. It's going to need liquidity. It's going to need interoperability and even the cross-border functionality that the XRP ledger provides. And I think that's some of the stuff you saw on X recently of Chris Larson doing some transactions with Bitcoin on the XRP ledger. So basically, without the XRP and all that it provides, it remains kind of incomplete, the ecosystem. So that's just a fun fact. As far as central bank digital currencies, you touched up on some stuff, David. We are seeing delinquencies at all-time highs, borrowing at all-time highs, defaults all-time highs, and this is happening at the institutional level as well. So that obviously trickles down and affects the consumer on a daily basis. When people try to argue about central bank digital currencies, despite what Donald Trump says, right, or any politician, I think CBDCs are inevitable because I think most people are broke. They are drowning in debt, and they are trapped in the largest wealth gap that we've ever seen in history. So I don't really pay attention to what politicians are saying. Politicians are known for being nefarious, right? I focus more on what the banks are doing and actually putting out in motion, right? If you look closely at what the Bank for International Settlements is doing, their innovation hub, you check that out. You could subscribe to it. They're pushing this globally still, including in the BRICS nations too. Something else to touch on is Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor is a very interesting character. And if you're going to be listening to somebody, I think it's important to do research on who you're listening to. You guys can research me for all I care, right? Look at my past and my track record. But if you look at Michael Saylor and what he's been saying, Michael Saylor, number one, in the dot-com bubble, he lost pretty big. Are you aware of that? He lost because he made the wrong bet. At the same
He
time,
lost
he was
billions. I think he's trying to
billions.
break the record.
Possibly, but if anyone's going to tell you to go mortgage your home for a digital asset where you don't even know where it originated from, why would you follow that kind of financial advice? I think even in today's world, today's traditional financial advisors, and I have friends who are financial advisors, they are having to relearn everything that they were taught because the old rules are out of, it's out of the game. That's it. These technologies and some of the things we talk about here and where this is all going, it's rewriting the rules of wealth creation and wealth generation. And what's interesting too, to touch on some things you said, David, is that the economic conditions to which we've been inflicted upon, and I say the word inflicted very carefully because if you pay attention to the macro and the micro, you realize that all this has been done in a very methodically and nefarious way. It's been planned out, right? All these economic conditions that have inflicted us upon us to push us into this digital system by creating the sensation of FOMO, fear of missing out, and even fear of uncertainty and doubt associated with traditional markets. So we're being bridged into this, but we're also being pushed into it, whether people acknowledge that or not. So it's very interesting. So just a lot to go into what you guys said over there. And again, I can go for hours on this stuff, but let's talk about this Elon Musk thing. I'll make it very brief. I'll try. I think it's very interesting because Elon Musk recently was in the Oval Office with Donald Trump. And if you look at Donald Trump's background, what's very interesting, he's a bankruptcy expert. This raises major questions, I think, because the U.S. corporation is already bankrupt. It's insolvent. We all can confirm this to a degree. And Trump's role, I don't think, is about getting back into office really just to kind of like free people from things. And that's a whole different rabbit hole I don't want to get into right now, but I think he's here to break the wheel and to re-engineer the economy from the ground up. And that is a process that's going to come with a lot of pain for the majority of people, to touch on what Edo was talking about. A lot of people are indeed being forced to sell some of the assets that they thought were going to make them rich in the short term. But then, of course, you have the regulatory environment that is kind of halting this. And I do want to touch on the SEC in a bit, but it's very interesting, though, if you start to understand like the role of Trump and what he's doing here. He has brought in all these young tech guys, right? It's not an accident of his cabinet picks, right? The financial power, I think, is shifting into new hands. We're seeing, the greatest wealth transfer, but I think that's why Trump is surrounding himself with all these young tech innovators and financial minds, people who understand the monetary system. Elon Musk, for instance, who originally helped create PayPal. He's one of those figures. At the same time, Trump's new Secretary of the Treasury, he worked for, he had deep ties with Goldman Sachs, and one of the most notorious financial institutions in American history. And here's the blunt truth. I think while many people are focusing, for instance, on George Soros and some of the other things that are happening, it's really the Rockefeller Foundation who's behind a lot of this stuff until this very day. They have massive influence over global finance, even Goldman Sachs, which is interesting. The team that Trump is assembling isn't just here to clean up the system. They're here to usher in this new one. So now this ties us into Musk's statements on blockchain and federal spending. He made a statement saying that we need to put all U.S. federal spending on the blockchain. That's a very big statement. And we have to really understand the implications of what this means, right? Whether he directly mentions XRP or not, doesn't matter. I don't need headlines, and neither do you guys, to confirm what we've researched for many years, what we already know. But what they're referring to is, they're referring to streamlining payments on the XRP ledger. That's why the central banks are using Ripple's technology at the highest levels of finance. It's because the XRP ledger operates very similar to digital gold for settlement. And that's what David Schwartz even said once. And that's why the Basel III requirements require central banks to hold adequate gold reserves, which aligns with the need for a reserve asset like XRP. So with Musk now pushing for blockchain-based government spending, he's indirectly confirming what we've been talking about at the highest levels of finances that are moving towards transparency. And I think that's how they're going to sell it. But it's not speculation. It's unfolding in real time. And final thought, guys. I'm sorry, guys. I know I'm hijacking the conversation.
No, take your time. I like what you're saying.
But it ties us then into the SEC and the regulatory shifts, because if you look at Trump's SEC chair appointee, he's another key piece to the puzzle with this shift, because the SEC lawsuit against Ripple, I think, is going to be likely resolved this year at a time of their choosing, but it's going to happen when regulations are kind of in place. And I believe 2025 is the year where this lawsuit may conclude because of the regulatory alignments with the institutions. So that is going to bring the legitimacy of the technology along with the clear classification of what XRP really is. And that's when institutional money will flood in. So a lot goes into that. And even I had some statements on HBAR, but I'll give you guys a chance to speak and I'll jump back onto that.
Well, I like what you had to say about at the end when you're talking about, when we will see, a conclusion to the case, because I think right now we are absolutely seeing step forward for that, infrastructure to be in place, the regulatory clarity piece, with the executive order giving 180 days to come back with all these recommendations. Well, they're already like hitting the ground running in a big way with their advisory councils and all this. We know that we're going to see some sort of stablecoin legislation for certain getting, approval this year, probably within the next few months. My guess is we're going to see legislation in FIT 21 for the classification of these various assets. Recently, we saw some acknowledgments of these XRP ETFs that have gone out. Now there's 15 of them. I think Grayscales and 21 shares have been at least acknowledged at this point. In the one for 21 shares, the SEC is acquiescing to the fact that XRP should be deemed a commodity. That right there, I think, says volumes. I genuinely do believe that, they will transition this entire space, into a type of scenario for which they can literally, I'm going to throw it out there, they will be able to control and guide it the way in which they want. ETFs allow them to do that in a massive, massive way. Recently, and I report this just the other day and this morning, I went back to it, 830 million XRP, 830 million XRP were bought by whales in a 24-hour time frame, literally just a couple days ago. And we've seen either another transaction, 400 million, another one for 500 million. I mean, these are big purchases, billions of dollars of XRP being purchased by known whales, these massive wallets that hold already tens of millions. And, when you see that stuff going on, I mean, it doesn't really take much. You might not understand all the motivations behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff, but that they're willing to drop billions of dollars into XRP, in a 24-hour time frame in their accumulation, long-term accumulation. That to me says so much, especially when the narrative is, like Edo was mentioning earlier, of trying to FUD you and I as retail out while they are gobbling it up like absolute crazy. And I do believe that they see what's coming down the pike. These discussions, come on, it's not like they're going to be surprised. They are absolutely discussing, behind the scenes, how and what are going to be the infrastructure and the rails for this new digital economy. They are already there. And we know that they're in big time discussions with, Ripple, and they're utilizing the XRP ledger and on and on and on. Those are fundamental facts. And you can research this. I mean, it's just, I just think that majority of people just don't invest the time researching it. They just don't invest the time that they need to truly get to a point where they genuinely understand. Because once you do, like you guys have, like we have, and you go back and you start seeing, you can definitely see a methodical plan, like you said there, Versan, of how it is happening. It's literally, you're almost watching. It's like one rail being laid on top of another rail. You're heading towards a destination. And I do believe the destination is a monetary reset that is going to transition the whole world, not just the US, not just BRICS, but the entire global infrastructure is being literally positioned to, as they say, it won't be to us, it may feel like a flip of a switch. It is not. They have been doing this for years, and it's just getting closer and closer to it. And the thing to pay close attention to is listen to their language. The same folks that were out there, Donald Trump included, right? Not that long ago, talking about how, oh my gosh, never, Bitcoin, digital asset, and here they are now. They're embracing it with, glee, practically.
Yeah.
No. There is a big shift, a big shift coming in. I think that if we are able to, hold on there and, kind of like put yourself in that position and think more long-term. And this is another thing I think is a big distraction. They get people focused on just the little itty bitty movements. Look, are you buying XRP now, $2-3, because, you plan on selling it when it hits like $10-20? I mean, come on. If you are, then yeah, that might seem like a fairly big return. But if you look at long-term where it's going to be down the road and how it is transitioning this entire global economy, you're being short-sighted. You're being short-sighted. That's 100%. At least my opinion. I don't know, Edo, what do you think?
Totally agree. That's why I touch everything else but XRP. That's why I'm pointing out so much for people taking profits on XRP, which is nothing wrong by take some profits here and there, but people are actually being forced to sell a majority of their bags, and I think that's a very sad situation. The fact that Versan, you have put that out about Hedera, I think we can have a very interesting talk about HBAR. I got the opportunity to meet them in Paris. They were in the Paris Blockchain Week, side by side, by the way, with Ripple and Stellar. And I think Hedera is going to be a major player, and it fixes actually the greatest problem that Bitcoin basically has, and that really makes it impossible for Bitcoin to become a currency. And I think the calculation is that if everyone on planet were to use Bitcoin for transactions, we could, each one of us, do two transactions in a lifetime. So Hedera is extremely scalable. And the fact that it's very interesting because they don't use a blockchain. Hedera utilizes a hash graph, which is actually a gossip mechanism which nodes communicate with each other. It's literally a gossip. They transmit information. And that makes Hedera extremely scalable. But the most interesting part, and I think you can show that on the screen about Hedera, is the governing council. Have you guys had a look on the governing council of Hedera?
Yeah, for sure. Some of the biggest names in fintech.
Well, also Brian Brooks.
How validators work on the XRP ledger. You have the entities who are taking decisions in a decentralized way. And you have some very interesting players there. You have Google, Boeing. I think you have major banks involved. LG,
Ubisoft, IBM.
I think they have 39 organizations last time I checked. Somewhere on the website, yes, you can see some of the key organizations.
These are not just the governors. They are also the owners of Hedera Hashgraph.
And which in 2022, I was on Louis Jackson's show, and I was researching this a long time ago, and I realized even that the military-industrial complex was using Hedera's technology for military applications, and that recently just got confirmed that the MIC was using it for their drone technology. So there was a relationship there, and if the military-industrial complex is behind anything, I can guarantee you that you're going to see trillions poured into it. But I think something else is interesting. If, kind of tying us back into Elon Musk's statement about putting all blockchain and federal spending on the blockchain, if government is going to be tracking spending at the federal level, then I think Hedera Hashgraph, HBAR's technology, could play a major role in providing the governance and security of that. And I do believe HBAR will be integrated into this complementary ecosystem, and that's going to offer the necessary timestamping and validation features for large-scale digital transactions. Think about that. I did recently make a video about how central banks have openly, it's not easy to find this stuff, but you could, if you know how to connect the dots, you can be able to see it. A lot of it isn't really public, but they were exploring Hedera's technology for years. I find that to be very interesting as well. So, you know, I think also people need to understand how some of these technologies are working together and not really against each other. They're not competing networks. So if they can complement each other,
That's right.
then there's an emergence of a basket of potential reserve currencies as well, which could also tie us into the discussion of what Trump was referring to. So that's something to look into, right? And I think that's something most people in the crypto ecosystem haven't figured out. And that's really where the bigger picture of this global wealth transfer we talk about, because we're seeing the reset of all things, right? And with everything we've been talking about is just accelerating. And if all the infrastructure value and trillions of dollars in tokenized assets are moving onto the blockchain systems, we're looking at a multi-quadrillion dollar shift over the next decade. And that's something that all of us can participate in. And that's really what the wealth transfer is, because financial systems are being tokenized. Gold and XRP, I think, are still going to play major key roles in all of this in some way, form, or fashion, directly or indirectly. That's a discussion yet to be seen. Commodities and resources are going to surge in value because that's the suppressed markets compared to overvalued markets. And money doesn't just vanish. It historically moves from one reality into the next, as Gregory Mannarino would describe it. And I think financial technology certainly is the center of it all. And I know I sound like a broken record to our audience here, but the reality is that everything that we've been putting out for the last few years, I think, is playing out faster than expected. And again, 2025 is going to be an interesting year because a lot of these changes are going to become undeniable at this point. And if you're positioned correctly, this is the opportunity of a lifetime, certainly.
Well, I think it's a generational opportunity. I don't think we've seen a level of this kind of opportunity in the history of markets, you know, in comparison to, you know, when you consider just how wide scale this transition is. Like you were talking about the evolution of a monetary system that has probably, when you think of dollars and coin and all that, you know, been in place for hundreds of years thus far. And now we're talking about the evolution of a monetary system, you know, where you're literally talking about everyone on the planet having access to it, with banking the unbanked. That is something that we have never seen before in the history of mankind. And, you know, what is coming is going to be such a tidal wave of change. You know, I guess, and I hate to use this word because I know there's a lot that goes behind this with a lot of new age stuff, but it is going to be a quantum leap in the way in which we transact with one another. This is the internet of value. This is the new iteration of how, you know, functionality of the world will work. I mean, when you're talking the tokenization of real world assets, I don't think a lot of folks, we've heard about it. We get desensitized to the word, but most folks don't really look at the full impacts of what that is going to be. I mean, we know that one of the biggest markets right now is, of course, the derivative market. We know that is a fact. We're talking quadrillions right there. Well, start thinking in multiples of that when you're talking about tokenizing, you know, markets like what Larry Fink is talking about, where 24/7. See, right now, this digital asset space is traded 24/7, 365. Well, you're not seeing that with the NASDAQ. You're not seeing that with a lot of exchanges. You're not seeing, you know, I mean, they have 9 to 5 hours, this close, that closes, you know, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corp and all that. I mean, you put that on steroids and you start tokenizing equities and commodities the way in which they're talking about doing it, and tokenizing futures contracts and all this stuff. You're talking derivatives on steroids. I mean, it will be mind bending. You're not just talking about a stock. You're talking about that one share being tokenized into how many different breakdowns, right? And so to think of some of these companies, look, in the 1970s, nobody in their right mind ever believed that one company would be worth the entire value of the New York Stock Exchange, but it happened. It happened when Apple breached that $1 trillion mark. It's the first company that has ever done it. Now you got NVIDIA worth what, 3 trillion market cap. I mean, we're seeing a change in, you know, values that most people could not even have digested just a few decades ago. So, and it's happening faster, isn't it? I mean, the rapidness of the change has even picked up in just amazing leaps and bounds. So I really do believe if should Jesus tarry, man, we get another 5 years, 10 years, the world is not even going to be recognizable. And I do believe this space is going to mint the world's first trillionaires, to be sure, where you get individuals that could be potentially worth $1 trillion or more, which is mind bending to think about. But that also coincides with the devaluation of those monetary instruments to get there. Now, a lot of people I've heard it said, oh, well, XRP could be $1,000 or $10,000. Yes, that's true. But what's $10,000 going to be 5 years from now? Well, it's going to be $10,000. That's not the point. The point is what will that $10,000 buy you 5 years from now? That is the valuation proposition when it comes to monetary instruments. And this is where, like you say, Versan, Edo as well, is that hard, real world assets like gold, like real estate, like various things where there's a finite amount and it's tangible is going to be, I think, crazy valuations for that, because it's going to be a supply and demand proposition. Because why? The amount of people that are being onboarded into this new digital economy is going to stagger the mind. Do you realize there are billions of people who are unbanked right now around the world? Billions. So in terms of percent, like what, 25, 35% of the world's population or more is not banked. Now you're going to bring them all in, and look at how this translates with the whole idea of making everywhere on earth accessible to high-speed data transfers like Starlink, other mechanisms like that. Don't kid yourself.
This document.
Yeah, it's well documented. This is a fact. This is where we're going. And it will probably, in my mind, it will represent the greatest wealth transfer that the world has ever seen.
I do want to pull up this document just for people to have a visual.
I'll be right back.
That's okay. Yeah. I just want to put this visual up, and I've covered this so many times, and I really, not gonna lie, I'm kind of tired of it. But when people ask about the XRP price like going high or being high, we've talked about this again many times, but I think first things first, we need to get one thing clear. When you look at XRP, you're going to see a lot of people talking crap about this stuff here, but XRP is not just an average cryptocurrency. I think when you actually study the documents and research of remember in 2017, Edo, when they said they wanted XRP to become the world reserve bridge currency, and then they took it off their website, right? Vendel and I, we were able to kind of catch that, and we started researching this stuff very closely, but we realized that XRP is not, again, the average crypto. It's the plumbing for the new financial system that's being built to replace the crumbling infrastructure of the old system. It's not hyperbole. XRP was really designed with a specific purpose to facilitate an infinite, and I use that word carefully as well, scalability, and solve a multi-trillion-dollar problem. Its intended use case was never aimed for retail investors, and many people will disagree with me on that, but that's fine. I think XRP was really built for institutions. Maybe it was really designed to redistribute the wealth back to the people, but that's a whole different discussion. But at this point and where we are today, it was really designed for institutions, for those who actually manage the flow of capital across the world. So to understand the value, I think you have to think beyond the typical investor mindset and actually see XRP for what it really is. Again, the backbone of a tokenized global economy. And when you try to consider the traditional financial system that we have today, which is riddled with insolvencies, deficits, overwhelming debt, the derivatives market alone is a ticking time bomb. I've said this many times, but with trillions of dollars of unbacked exposure, and you add that to the commodities market, the outdated settlement systems, the central banks grappling with monetary inefficiencies and all these delinquencies as well, what we need is a bridge, right? A solution that is going to link the failing systems to the modern, interoperable and efficient approach. And that's where XRP comes in. So then you look at Ripple. They've been quietly building the global rails for the transformation through RippleNet, an interconnected system that allows these institutions to transact amongst each other seamlessly. That's where XRP comes into the equation, because RippleNet enables institutions to use XRP to power the liquidity and settlement capabilities of the network. So its role extends far beyond payments. It's about interoperability of financial ecosystems. So we're talking again about the control of capital flow throughout the world. So the utility then comes from its ability to bridge and interconnect various digital assets, which means cryptocurrencies, traditional financial systems, tokenized economies, which makes it indispensable in a world that's moving to a blockchain-based system. Does that make sense to the audience? I hope it does, because again, we've been studying this for years, and this is where the value of XRP lies. It's in its network. Again, Ripple continues to expand on a daily basis. Partnerships, banks, governments, financial institutions, which again underscore the importance of the digital asset in the transformation. So as partnerships mature, as regulatory clarity emerges, I think that's when XRP's price is going to naturally reflect the demand it was intended to meet to begin with, right? So with a finite supply of 100 billion tokens burned with every transaction, that ensures that its usage grows. So does the value to meet the institutional scale demand. Does that make sense? So I can go on and on explaining this stuff, but I think
not only
XRP was designed
finite, but it's also deflationary. That makes ultimately very interesting. Unlike Bitcoin, for example, which happens to be inflationary. You guys know that in 2013, there was a bug in Bitcoin that created billions of Bitcoins out of thin air. We never had the same thing on XRP, for example. And I think one thing that is very overlooked is the interledger protocol. And you say it's one key word, Versan, which is interoperability. And we're going to have many systems. And that's why I don't fall for the narratives. And just, I think, 1 week ago when I was in Dubai, there was this huge drama where some X account from Stellar, which doesn't really belong to Stellar Foundation, but someone made a comment and started a war between Ripple and actually between XRP and XLM. Have you guys seen that? That was, for me, the confirmation that most people don't fully understand that we are migrating to a financial system, a multidimensional financial system where blockchains are going to communicate with each other. And I don't really like this discussion of whether should you hold only XRP or XLM. I think both are going to play a very important role. And I saw that a lot of XRP holders were selling their XLM because of this confusion that took place on X. So I think that only shows us that most investors are not ready for what's coming. And I have said this multiple times, bank them banked is the Stellar's motto. And XRP's one was to become a world reserve currency. And I like to see how Ripple has carefully chosen these words. And it's not something that they wanted on the sidelines. It was the main role of XRP. That's why they originally designed XRP. And we see that the World Bank, we see that the IMF are following the script, even though most people are not really paying attention. I, by the way, downloaded the videos where Brad Garlinghouse comes out and say, we created XRP primarily to become a world reserve currency. We also have screenshots from the official Ripple's website. Meanwhile, Stellar has always been here to actually bank the unbanked. And from my understanding, and I say this multiple times, they created Ripple and Stellar to bypass the competition laws, because you couldn't have one single company or one single blockchain that would be capable to capture all of the market segments. And that's why we have the Hederas, that's why we have the Stellars, we have the Ripples, and so on.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I make actually, David, would you like to go first? And I want to make a statement on the XRP and XLM differences and complementary ecosystem that they actually have.
No, I would really like to hear what you're going to say here, because more than likely I might end up saying something. I want you to, because it's about the audience here. We have been in this space, all of us, a long time. And I think that for the majority, we, for us here right now, we understand where this is going because we spent so much time really involved in it, like neck deep. But please, for the audience sake, go through with what we're going to say here.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have a document. I send this to all my clients that book sessions with us, and they are more confident than ever in their investments and what we teach. This is a document called the IMF Trust Bridges. You can all download this for free on Google. Go look for it. IMF Trust Bridges. It was from 2022, I believe. And if you read this document thoroughly and immerse yourself in it, and also try to interpret the language that they use to make things sound more complicated than they really are, you realize that there is that two-tier banking system they talk about, where they describe something as central bank money and private money. Today, private money would be more like P2P, microtransactions. That's XLM. And that's the only technology they describe in that document. All right. For central bank money, again, liquidity, plumbing, central bank money akin to physical gold reserves, hence the Basel III regulations. It describes very similar to XRP, what it is. So I think the ongoing debate, whether XRP or XLM is superior technology, those are the individuals who are certainly missing the bigger picture of what this transition is all about. In the reality, they actually serve distinct purposes, while their technology is very similar in many different ways. In the evolving financial system built for a multipolar world, and that's really where this is all going, if we're going to avoid nuclear war. They have differences. They also are complementary in ways that are not yet fully understood or revealed, even to myself, right? But if you do enough research, you will come to the same damn conclusion. I think the rivalry between them is largely noise. I've had people book sessions to discuss this thoroughly, and I've explained it to them. They're both integral to the two-tier banking system model that is carefully being constructed behind the scenes. We have Augustin Carstens from the Bank for International Settlements openly discussed this. I have a video of this on my X account where he describes a two-tier banking system, exactly describing what the IMF Trust Bridges was saying, all right? So I get on camera and I just interpret what those documents have said and try to explain it in a different way to people.
Versan, wasn't that one where they said it takes two to tango?
That's from the World Bank. Remember that too? It takes two to tango. And they're talking about private money and central bank money. And the only digital assets they describe in that very document from 2021 is XRP and XLM. They refer to Ripple and Stellar as stablecoins. I have documents here confirming that Stellar is really at the forefront of issuing the CBDCs, while XRP is the ledger is going to provide the interoperability between them. So at the fundamental level, I think XRP and XLM do share technical similarities. That's where people are going to try to argue with us about this stuff. But both were created from the very same foundational code, and their intended functions targets different markets, which sets them apart in its own. So that's your foundation for beginning your research on this stuff, right? And then when you look even closer, sorry guys, I'm almost done. I know.
No, take your time, take your time.
XRP RippleNet is designed for institutional settlement and liquidity management, which facilitates all the things we've talked about. And XLM is really focused on retail remittances for financial inclusion. It's right there in the language. So yeah, there is distinction between the both of them, which aligns with this two-tier banking model that they have openly discussed. It's just, again, people do not do their research, and yet they're the ones who have some of the most influence in this space. Seriously.
Yeah. I happen to have now recently, we saw that you see Ripple's website have removed CBDCs from the website. However, we know I've got a video that Ripple put out that I have had that I downloaded and I saved. And, I'm not going to play it here. It's about 4.5 minute video. You guys probably know the one, but where it's talking about Ripple working with sovereign states to develop CBDCs for the state, not for retail. It's for the state. So there is definitely a two-tiered system. There's zero doubt about it. We all know that. Now, I think where a lot of confusion comes is a lot of people say, well, XRP is a different price on this ledger and that ledger and all this and that. Well, the XRP and the native token on the XRP ledger does not matter, even with RLUSD. RLUSD, when it operates on the XRP ledger, you have to burn XRP to utilize RLUSD. So whether it is through a central bank token that is not not native XRP, because XRP is not a CBDC, or RLUSD or whatever it is, whatever is operating on the XRP ledger, you need XRP. You need XRP in order for that to move, right? Because XRP has to be burned in order for those transactions to take place. which is a deflationary mechanism for sure. And as more and more utilization and adoption becomes transparent on the XRP ledger, you're going to see the demand for XRP, in my estimation, literally take off. Now, a lot of this stuff, in the early days, it seemed to be very easy to get. Well, not easy, but it was available. I think now you're seeing a lot of stuff that, is because people had saved it from times past, and you can go in and you have this information to research it. Now, it's the interpretation of stuff, like you just pointed out there, that document's available there. And Augustin Carson has been sitting as the general manager for the BIS for a lot of years. You had Christine Lagarde, who is the head of the IMF, who's now head of the ECB. Do you think that these people are in these positions just by sheer happenstance?
Yeah.
That are not being moved and strategically into these various positions? Come on. They are literally following a narrative and an agenda, but most people are being kept in the absolute dark. They're completely.
It's clear. It's clear, David.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's very clear at this point that there are going to be winners and losers as this new system evolves, because you could just read some of the comments sometimes, and those are the ones who are, I think, so emotionally attached to volatility in the markets, not understanding that these markets have been manipulated and even suppressed to the highest degree. So, I personally detach my emotion from these investments, and I had to learn that over the years. When I first started, I remember I was watching this stuff. When the lawsuit came, first of all, I was confirmed right there and then that this technology had a real use case. That's number one. Okay. SEC is an aggregate for Wall Street to circumvent anything that could disrupt the machine. It effectively killed the freaking banking system, and they could not allow that. Stanford University professor in 2021 talked about the Ripple lawsuit, saying that this effectively killed the banking system, and they had to build around it to create a situation where they could make money out of it, profitable. And that's when they're going to evolve this stuff. So like I said, at a time of their choosing, but that alone gave me the confirmation I needed to do deeper research into this stuff. My point, though, is that all these years, we had to wait 5 years for real price action in XRP, and I still don't give a shit. I'm not focused on this stuff. What I'm more focused on, guys, is becoming relevant to society as more of the layoffs begin to accelerate. That is coming still. So I think people who are invested in this stuff and who understand it, those are the people who say, know what you hold, right? Just invest in the technology, do your research, honest research, guys. You have to read this stuff if you really want to have more confidence in your investment and detach your emotion with it. Put it in cold storage and forget about it. That's what I've been doing now. I don't even look at my portfolio anymore, but I'll tell you one thing, I am certainly richer from when I first started because of the patience. And that took time to learn that stuff. But, that's what we try to tell people here. So you don't have to make the mistakes that we make. Get emotional about something, sell, and then you end up losing more money, right? So just be patient. And this is a long-term game. I think regulations are really going to kick this off. And, that's something I said even 3 years ago. So if we have regulations, again, brings the legitimacy of the technology, the classification, and then the institutional money. So
I would agree with that.
I think that's the hardest thing is the patience, right?
Yeah.
So
as a final statement, I would have to agree. I think the biggest factor, the biggest thing that you can do for yourself is to just educate yourself to the best of your ability, and I don't mean, like, YouTube is great. I always say YouTube is great, but it's great for confluence. Listening to somebody's opinion, and you may agree with the opinions. You may agree with them. You may not agree with them. That's great for, just kind of like getting, maybe, you're getting some kind of like direction or whatever, in a sense of like, oh, okay, where am I at? This and that. You kind of get a sense in yourself, but it is no substitute for really getting out there and genuinely researching it, because, most of the folks that are swayed in this space are swayed by sentiment, but there's way more than sentiment, when it comes to this space. And so, guys, I'm going to throw this out there. All of us in this space right here, we try to make ourselves available to assist people in becoming more aware, more educated. I know that Versan, goes out there. He has a coaching program. Edo, I believe, meets with clients. I meet with clients. And guys, I'll tell you what, for, probably the most reasonable cost that you would ever expect in this space, because, there are folks out there that, I remember when Tika Tawari was coming out and he had a, kind of like a newsletter. It was like a $5,000 fee to get Tika's newsletter and stuff like that, right? And this kind of stuff. And that was the way traditional newsletters worked with markets. But to me, I really look at it like, how many people can we really bring with us? How many people can we genuinely help, to kind of get over that finish line? And the biggest way of helping them is right here, helping them understand and critically think their way through this space. I'm telling you, most people are not ready for it. They are just not. They're not thinking strategically.
Can I make a final statement? And
yes,
then I'd
please.
like to
And
hear
that's my
Edo's
final
thoughts,
statement. I hope that sticks with folks.
No, it does. It even sticks with me. That's why I love you guys. I resonate very deeply with you, and so does my brother. And that's why I love this show. What we do here together. But it's weird. I watched The Matrix yesterday. Again, I like to watch old movies sometimes because I realize that when I see them again and again, there's some things I missed, right? And I was watching The Matrix, and I remember when obviously there's some amazing scenes in that movie, but when he takes the pill, right, he says, I can't explain the Matrix to you. I can only show it to you, right? You have to, it's something you have to see and walk through the door yourself. And that resonated deeply with me because I started reflecting on some of the things I've said over the years and what I've tried my best to do and educate people. There are things I know about and things that I've talked about openly many times, but I can't unload the knowledge to people. You can't. No matter how many times you try to explain things, it's like you have to go see it for yourself. And I've seen this even with people I've done sessions with, right? Markets started to move after me really taking the time to explain this stuff. And I get like 5-6 emails, Versan, what's going on? And that's what I'm talking about. It's like you have to immerse yourself in this stuff. If you're investing in something, you might as well know everything about it, right? If you're putting your money into it. I tell people all the time, this is probably the last opportunity with that wealth gap widening and the way things are going, guys. Where, like Edo said, they're going to create consumer dependency, right? You can't fuck this thing up. You cannot mess it up this time. Otherwise, you're going to end up on the lower end of society. And that's really what they're doing here. So do your research, be compassionate at the same time. That's, I think, the most critical thing we don't talk enough about in this world. But, just stick to the plan. Really. And our community is incredible. I love our listeners. I love our community. You make this place special. But please, watch some of the older videos we put out. I think a lot of the things that we've covered in the past are playing out in real time. They're more relevant than they were back then today. So those are my final thoughts. And I want to thank everyone for their support.
Yeah, we are above 7,000 people watching live.
Wow.
So special thanks for the audience. I know with the repetitions, we can perhaps cross 100,000 views. That's wonderful. I think we have been doing a fantastic job. And I see the messages, I see the comments. Just yesterday, I shared with you, Versan, someone was able to pay their debts and they're still holding on digital assets, gold and silver. And I think it has been already life-changing, but we are just at the beginning. I like to see XRP now be below $3. I mean, you can't get a coffee with $3, so that's why I'm not really taking profits on something that I truly believe is going to be worth on the hundreds or thousands of dollars in the future. So my message today is that I agree with Versan and David. I think the window is closing, so it's really the time to lock in. It's really the time to do the fundamental research, which is going to give you a boost of confidence on your investments, and it's going to help you to not be so emotional about investing in digital assets. I think most people are still in a stage where a 10% or a 20% drop can shake them out. I got DMs of people telling me what's going on with XRP. It has dropped from $2.80 to $2.60. And I think that's a very big mistake, because if you're acting emotional on this short fluctuations, that's going to affect your judgments on the future. That's going to affect your decision making. And I don't think you're going to be here when we are at $20 or $50. And most people will be priced out, I'm telling you. And also, guys, be very mindful on the comment sections on X. There's a lot of people getting scammed. People are actually getting their wallets drained, falling for false giveaways. You have to be very aware of that. I think you should have a principle that anyone reaching out to actually help you on your investments is a scammer until it's proven otherwise. And I think that's going to protect you from falling for these traps. It's getting even more difficult to be, for example, a top 10% holder of XRP. Nowadays, it takes about 2,500 XRPs to put you on the top. But if you think about it, just let's say a year ago, you would need about $800 or $1,000 to be on the top 10%. Nowadays, you need almost $7,000 and expect that value to go up. So the more you lose your XRPs, the more difficult it's going to be for you in the future to have a reasonable bag for your future. So I'm really calling out for people to be mindful of this situation.
Yeah.
I will throw this out there. Just think of this. Just in November, it cost you what? $50,000 for 100,000 XRP. Now that's $274,000 for the same amount.
I can't believe it. Yeah, it's incredible.
It is wild,
most
incredible.
people don't even have $10,000 in savings. That should give you an idea of how difficult it's going to be to actually hold and stick to your digital assets in the future.
Majority of people are being priced out holding those numbers.
Like I say, I say this to my friends. I practice Old English sometimes. It's kind of funny. I say, who hath no XRP shall weep in the streets, whilst we feast in the moonlight halls.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, sorry.
That sounds very, very cool. Very cool.
Hey, well, you know.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
It's true.
I really appreciate you guys. You're great, and this community is fabulous. I just pray that, and I wish for everybody to just see, their dreams happen. One thing I'd say, look, a lot of people get talked out of their dreams. Don't let someone talk you out of your dreams because they've given up on theirs. I would say that right there.
Well, that's why they call it dream. You got to be asleep to believe it.
Well, maybe.
I'm just kidding. All right, guys. Well, thank you for all your support. We did hit over 7,000. It's been freaking incredible. Next week, I hope we can do this again. I know we've all been busy, but I'd love my brother to be here with us.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we miss Mandel. Let's see if we can get him next week.
Okay, guys. Well, thanks for everything and take care. All right. Stick to the plan. Everything's going to be okay. And just be mindful of everything going on.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.